fits, but it's a phenomenon of language that we can reorganize these letters. These letters start to have agency. We start to, hopefully, in reflecting on these, see that they're conventions in and of themselves. This whole system of written language has been generated over thousands and thousands of years, and there are these little cracks that hopefully let new thought or new regard slip in. Now, I hope this doesn't affect any of my relationships with current students per se. I'm not sure that any of these are true in direct relation, but there's something I find very peculiar about it. And you should always consider me in this category, actually, in the studio, or anybody in your studio for that matter. Again, it seems like it could be related, but it's accidental. And the turns of phrase, the availability of language and metaphor to be redeployed after a discovery like this. I'm not sure what a somewhat insult is, but I could kind of guess it. What an Aristotelian retaliation is, however, it takes a lot more consideration. As does a colonialist oscillation. Now, it's hard to believe that this many letters can be reorganized in this particular way and still have some kind of link. I mean, these are true in that they're reorganized from elements of the other. Whether or not the original meanings attached have value is harder to say. And I like the idea that these things can be somehow explored and understood as nonsensical, which it's perfectly fine for poetry to be, or as portent of real meaning. I mean, I think maybe perhaps some of these characters who are emerging here you're familiar with somehow, or imagine that you're familiar with. What is a dishonest humanist? What is desiring ringside? What is that need to be close? Truth be told, I've used this as a conciliatory way with certain friends in difficult situations. I mean, of course, there's some relation there, but not necessarily happy. These are not also a real good time kind of situation. It's fascinating. They're fascinating. It's curious, but they're a little on the dark side. This one's got a kind of upbeat swing to it, but when you realize you can change it to this as well, it takes a turn. I've thought about this particular project at times as a bit of a kiss and tell about what I understand the art world to operate like. Perhaps I even have this condition. Many people do, but again, quite common. At the same time, I like the construct of a caution option, where you can purchase caution to the highest bidder somehow. If anybody wants to make an illustration of what that might be, it's fair game. Something about weightlifting. Now, a lot of people might agree with this over at the business school, for instance, but again, I'm not, I'm attracted to these because I don't think anybody has any control of what they imply, per se. As an artist, I can bring attention to their existence, and then you as the audience member, in that kind of classic 50-50 deal which we share, can come up with your side. In some cases, it's hard to believe that these aren't more realized or utilized by the grand structures of advertising that exist. There's some resonance with these. And certainly some possible explanatory power in why things go wrong exactly in the way they do in a global economy like ours. That seems to be populated by people who might be interested in this position, who are purveyors of these. This one might be familiar to you all as well. Partially, I'm sure it was an inspiration. I have a great deal of regard for Marcel Duchamp's work and legacy. I would recommend him to students and colleagues alike. This was the title of a film. It is only 16mm film, or only film he produced, made in the 1920s, called Anemic Cinema. As I mentioned before, the cinema really constitutes a very large part of my foundations. This is a little bit more Frank O'Hara, kind of the risque aspect of the cinema. And then we come to things like this, that why hasn't anybody thought of it yet? I've always appreciated this particular combination because of the way it suggests the kind of animate life to letters themselves, or to language, period. That one's a bit of a stretch. Wow, I still can't quite get over it, along kind of Twin Peaks lines. One of the reasons I'm particularly attracted to that hustling sunlight combination is that there's only one word that in 3 different versions really works within the anagramic structure, and hustle is that word for some reason. And I do like the idea that there's some investigation could be thought of within those lines. I've been lately taking greater stock of this particular one. It's funny in looking into the relation of this one, because I have done some research in regards to most of it. Apparently, the whole history of contemporary bullfighting is based on the fact the picador in the bullfighting ring is the person who prods the bull with the lance. At this point, they play a lower key position to the matador, in places where this rather kind of rough practice still does go on. However, the matador was not at the beginning the star of this kind of scenario. It was the picador But the audience became very bored with the picadors because they were not very active in their pursuit of their job with the bull. Slightly more rock and roll. And this is the final of the 60 of the set, more or less. What I'd like to do now is share with you what is more or less an animated, time-based version of this project, which is currently in development. It's short, more or less a trailer. It kind of adds a little bit more. Perhaps it's not effective, but I think now that you're aware of the elements, it can work well. It is going to be, let me just make sure it comes up here. It did before. Okay, now if anybody here is sensitive to stroboscopic effects, I do not know if this is very stroboscopic. So if this could induce seizure for any reason, it's a very serious warning, as I'm not sure. This has never been shown to a public audience. So please beware. It's not meant to, I'm not trying to hurt anybody here, but these things can happen when we flash lights very quickly.